Richmond reverse. Kate, I love Richmond reverse. I found this course to bring. Now, one thing's for sure, don't wait till the middle of the race to pick up the action because it comes at you immediately. These guys will give us a good example. As a matter of fact, this is the first time today that I've seen the first K of racing because it goes from the gun, Kate Bates.
Well, when the first KOM is only about 2 kilometres in, you can do so much damage. And across the board, men's and women's, all of the divisions, we saw in APAC, Dave, that a lot of the moves were going in that first kind of 10 kilometres where they go over 2 KOMs and then also up another little kicker that isn't a KOM but still pretty tough. And then the field was reduced down to 30, 40 riders, which is much more manageable than this giant field, 91 they've got out there for the men's A. So I think that's a tactic that they've really been employing. But we've got a couple of the superstars from last season who are lining up again. Philippe Nystrom is probably the big name, I think, to look for from Costa Rica. Travis Frazier from OMG, They Killed Kenny. He's another one that had a really good ride in Richmond, particularly last season, but also pretty consistent kick on him overall. So it's good to see those names back, but also some new faces as well.
Watch out for Lars Monks of the Finesse team out here as well. And we're going to get a good feel. This is Sweet here, the Vision team, a rider I like a lot. And this is going to look at the numbers here. They're throwing up some massive watts up on the board. So you're not going to win the bike race here in the first 2K, Kate, but you can lose it. That's for sure. If you miss the train as it's rolling out of the station, and believe me, it's going right now. They've blown the whistle. All aboard the Wattage Express as we're leaving Richmond. So points scored. I have to remember that each race we have a fresh set of eyeballs on it out there. So the bonuses have changed a little bit. You can see we're scoring 10 deep now as the first points being picked up there on 23rd. They've got another KOM coming up very, very quickly here on Libby. I mean, you are just dive bombing down. The pro tip of the day is certainly exactly, you don't want to be these guys right here. And so that one wasn't scored. I apologize. It's the next one that we're scoring. The one that's coming up now will be scoring 10 deep here.
And so that's good to explain a bit of a change from last season. Last season, we only went 3 to 5 deep, depending on the race. They changed that a bit from memory, but this time they are going 10 deep. So that kind of gives the riders a bit more impetus to continue sprinting. They also have points, Dave, for fastest through segment. So that is different to first over the line, first 10 over the line. The other change they've had in regards to points is overall they're now going 80 deep instead of 30 deep. So we've got 91 riders out on course. That makes every rider out on course in contention to earn some points. So let's take a look at the bonus points. So far they've gone up one. They're about to cross through this second one here. We're just watching Sosnowski. Isn't the acceleration up this cobble's pretty impressive? Johnson coming in second. In that first sprint, it was Ziegler who took the points ahead of Sweet, Heinlein, Cameron O'Reilly in fourth. Bit of a different mix in this second time around, Dave. I mean, that indicates to me that, you know, maybe the burn of those KOMs really does a bit of damage and they do need to drop back in the pack and recover a bit between.
Yeah, well, and this was what was so interesting in some of the earlier races was every race played out differently as it was such a big, riders surprisingly came back from the dead, I guess is a good way to put it, or what you would have thought would have been a group that wasn't going to rejoin. We saw that a few times throughout the day, so surprisingly resilient. And I think after that huge effort over those first 2 climbs, that the reality that it is going to be a long 32.5 kilometers of racing here. And it looks like we're going to merge these 2 groups together, Kate.
I feel like, Dave, when people start their Zwift racing career, they look at the distances and they're like, that's not too bad. But it's like, how can I describe it? It's like a criterium on steroids. it is full on from the absolute first pedal stroke. And we talked about Ashton Lambie starting in one of the earlier locations today, and you said he almost got a bit of a shock because he's a bit new to the Zwift world. I do feel like some riders who come in underestimate a little bit the intensity of how these guys race, and it is pretty full on. A lot of gaps often open up pretty quickly, but they do have quite a big bunch that have come back together now. There's around 50 riders coming back into it. I expect there won't be too many more breaks until the next time through those climbs. But this is where, teams can start to look at those bonus points accrued so far and perhaps tweak the pre-race strategy a little bit.
Very popular team that we're looking at right now with I'm going to call them the YEG CX, the YEG CX team. This is Claffey that we're with here. It's, again, nice to see teams making a move up into this division, and certainly a squad to watch out here. But I agree with you, Kate. I think that the next time you're really in danger of getting tailed off of this group or getting your ticket punched out here is going to be the bonus sprints that we have. So many points available. As we saw in some of the previous races, there were riders collecting upwards of 40 points out there, and that's what the win is worth. So they've doubled the value of these QOMs, KOMs, and bonuses. And as you mentioned, that time sector going to be coming into play. But we'll be watching this. What are you going to go with, Kate? You're going to call them YEG?
Yeah, well, Anna and I were discussing on APAC that it took nearly the whole season to figure out what these acronyms meant. So we can go with YEG. Can somebody please jump into the live stream
Someone will tell us
on
right?
YouTube and tell us what it is, please. Tell us what it stands for.
Otherwise
we'll just continue to guess week in and week out until somebody explains that to us, which can also be kind of good sport as well. Let's flick back to the women here. Now, we also need to consider within the women that there might be a bit of sub-team going on here, because Anna Rogers and Alicia Starts particularly usually ride for Revo. They are here on screen under Vixen, and we're wondering if perhaps that is because they're having to combine to make that team to make the numbers up. So that's a curious one as well. Do we have a few divisions within what is labelled as one team? Let's take a look at those bonus points. Alicia Starts, cheapers, 27 points so far. Isn't she off to a cracking start? Only one ahead of Jana Gillick, Anna Rogers and Hayley Gill, both sitting on 24 points. Starts was one of the riders last season, Dave, that we didn't talk about much in the first couple of weeks, but by the end, she was really quite a dominating force.
Yeah, she's another rider out of Seattle. There you go. Thank you, Marcus. You ask, and there you go. Marcus, the man on the spot. So that is the airport code for Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And I should have known that.
I like to think that I know airport codes pretty well, but I must say I haven't flown into Edmonton before, so I don't recognise that. But thank you very much for clarifying that. And look, there's quite a lot of people jumping in, which is very helpful, I must admit. And feel free, anybody, to jump in when we're butchering any acronyms. We like your help and assistance.
So, Anna, if I'm the director here for the Velocity Vixen team, I would shout out, okay, pink hats, you're one team. All right. And we
exactly. You're not delving into the old-fashioned stakes, are you here, Dave?
Oh, no, that's you and Anna's territory. Nathan and I will steer clear of that. That's for sure. Well, thanks, Adrian. For sure. How many great riders are coming out of Seattle? My goodness, you had Laura Matson-Coe, Keller v. Wynn, Meredith Keller, and certainly Alicia Stats is the latest in a long line of esports superstars out of the Pacific Northwest, particularly Seattle, actually. I don't know if you ever had a chance to get up to Seattle to race, but such a beautiful part of the United States.
Look, my only familiarity with Seattle is from that delightful movie with Meg Ryan in it and Tom Hanks. I think you'll know the one I'm talking about.
Sleepless Listen,
But I do
Seattle
know
with
that it is meant
houseboats.
to be exactly. It's meant to be one of the better by reputation cycling places in the US. So I can tell you as a foreigner, that is the reputation it holds. We've got
Wow, so this
O'Reilly
is
has shot off the front here. This is quite a big break, actually. 6 seconds back to Monks. You spoke about him before, Dave, saying that he was certainly one to watch. And then another three back to Van der Veen. Oh, and pretty much the whole bunch is coming there. So I wonder if O'Reilly's attacked and Monks has attempted to go across here. It's a long way on
it's
your own. He can pick up some good points, but still quite a long way to race.
I'm trying to do a little bit of research because O'Reilly in the American cycling lexicon historically, there was Rory O'Reilly raced in the 1984 Olympics. He was our kilometer racer. He ended up seventh place. But then his son, Cody O'Reilly, went on to be a pro, raced for a good decade. And this is Cameron O'Reilly. And I'm wondering if it is in, it may or may not be. I actually would give it about because so many times, I think it's the same in Australia, you see a pretty strong family bond in cycling. And a lot of times that comes back to the junior racing, where if one kid is racing, the others race as well. And if there's talent in the DNA, a lot of times that is dispersed amongst the entire group of kids. But either way, O'Reilly is putting the pressure on right now. A lot of times I look and think, okay, are we trying to steal some points? Because I think that might be the case, Kate, is with those 10 points that you get for the top bonus, it makes it worth it to make that effort. And if you're a team that has the luxury of having riders that you can use for different means out there and have some, I guess you'd call it a points hunter, well, it can be quite valuable. Although this is going to come back together here.
But good that he's animating the race. When Jacob Claffey went off the front before, what was interesting about his attack is he's not particularly suited to that shorter, sharper stuff. So we wouldn't necessarily expect to see him bursting out of the pack in a final sprint. But what he does have is pretty incredible 20-minute power numbers. So we know he's a bit of a diesel, bit of a time trialist. So his opportunity to get points is not in those intermediates. His opportunity to get points is definitely in a breakaway. So it's good to see the different strength riders playing off their own tactics amongst it. You know, I'm not sure that this is the kind of course where, especially in the first, 16, 18 kilometres, many breaks will be allowed to go. They might go, but then come straight back. But definitely those last two KOMs that leave you with about 12K left to go will be pretty interesting. Over to the women, we've got Joy Connolly trying to jump across. She's still about 25 seconds behind that leading group. In fact, starts is a few seconds off the front of Rogers, Gill slightly back from that, and Gillick. I mean, they're essentially all solo riders at the moment, having a big, long,
Huh.
dysfunctional team's time trial.
Well, yeah, I've seen team time trial squads that have gotten worse than this even out there, but you got to give Alicia Stat
yeah,
credit.
we saw a few of those last season, especially in the early ones. But to their credit, by the end, most of them had gotten it together.
This is a rider for the future, no doubt about it. We were just talking about her hometown of Seattle, and she's why. As Alicia has such a bright future out here, and she is rolling it now. The Canadian Anna Rogers, Yana Gillick, these are the names that have made the race. It was interesting to see Joy Connolly, and it is going to come back together here. So that's your original four. This is Joy. She's heading
Well,
down
Dave,
these
I know before Christmas, Alicia said that she was really hoping Santa, and by Santa I think she meant her husband, would bring her one of those Wahoo bikes to put in her pain
Did she
cave.
get
So
it?
I'm wondering if show of dominance is kind of fueled by a new bike over Christmas. We'll have to find that out.
You know, and Nathan does such a great job of monitoring the social media, and I feel bad because I believe that I talked right over the top of a post that came in, possibly about first responders out there. And I have a feeling that a few of the women that we have racing work in that arena. There you go. Thanks, Sarah. Sarah Strange was talking about being hardworking essential workers that couldn't race the premier league times. That is very understandable. We're lucky wherever you are in the world to have those folks that are really stepping up and leaning in for us out there. So many different ways.
Oh, and I mean, isn't it incredible that they're essential workers? We've got many doctors, surgeons, a lot of lawyers amongst the group. Although people could possibly argue lawyers aren't as essential, but depends what experiences you've had. Anyway, moving on. That all of these guys have these big jobs. A lot of them have kids. They're balancing a lot, and they're still able to find the time to kind of fuel their hobby and their passions, to do the training and to turn up and be at such an impressive level. I mean, it's a bit of an honour for us to get to commentate on them. A sprint happening here for some points. The Monument Sprint replay we're just taking a look at, and Felton coming Barnes is almost coming over the top of him. It looks like he'll duck over. It happens quickly. I think we've seen a lot in APAC, Dave, and interested in the other leagues, that the riders who are going too early are often getting rolled for those points.
Sure are. Yeah, we've learned that timing has been absolutely critical. And on these brick sprints, it makes an even bigger difference out here going back in with the men. So, okay, that was the most recent Monument sprint. We'll see how those points start stacking up. There's a little bit more going on in the background. You can hear the supercomputers working away as we have changed up the bonuses, adding these timed segments to look out for as well. And as you're talking about with the women's categories, just responding to what the racers were looking for after season one. And I think that it's been universal as far as I've seen the way people have been receiving the changes to the league as we're out here on race number one of season number 2. I think I can speak for my colleague Kate Bates. It's so good to see everybody back out here and racing. And going back to what you're saying, Kate, for so many of us, and man, I wish Zwift had come along. Two things, like high school mountain biking and Zwift, I wish they'd come along earlier in my life, that's for sure, because just so good for your mental health, not just your physical well-being, but just where you're at, your overall well-being benefits so greatly from exercise. And that's, at the end of the day, we have so much fun doing this, but you get a great workout in. That's for sure. I mean, it goes beyond a workout, doesn't it? This is an all-body experience racing on Zwift.
Yeah, it sure is. I mean, I think it's kind of funny to watch the commentary on social media around some of the athletes feeling as though they've perhaps eaten too much Christmas pudding, and season 2 being slightly more challenging to start than season 1 was. But that's something to really consider as well, especially the favourites that we see, coming back each week and each season, is you can't be on top form every week of the year. So some of these riders will hit those kind of PB powers in Zwift that we see some weeks. Other weeks they may be a little bit off. So we'll get to know, I think, after a couple of seasons, where the riders' priorities are, which seasons are better for them, which they're turning up a little bit fitter, and which ones they're just committing to for the team, or to continue moving forward.
Yeah. It's interesting, Kate, with riders who are starting to have success, you have to really, have that conversation about, you can't continue to just keep winning every race you do forever. You have to understand the peaks and the valleys of fitness. I was just the other day heard a comment from. We're going to take a look at a live view right now. As I was talking about, Ned Overend was talking about the fact that getting in shape is tough. The real trick is to never let yourself get that far out of shape. When you continue to stay active, you don't want to pull a Jan Ulrich, right? Put on 20K and half the kilos and have to come back from that. So you got to keep it reasonable out there. As we're in with Brian Kelly
I was
right
going
now.
to pipe in with that, Dave, that it can only be Jan Ulrich is the best example. We're going to get Brian Kellison, as you were saying, up on screen. Just his screen. He goes on Twitch Live. We've seen him before.
I think we're going to jump in.
He's pretty animated, isn't he, Dave?
Yeah, we've met Brian before, and familiar character. Good to see you back. Good job, Brian. So Penn Velo is the team. They're up there in Northern California. Super strong squad. very motivated, and he's a good communicator as well. We've enjoyed meeting Brian. So uh, we're big fans of riders who run their own Twitch out here. It's so much fun as you learn about the people behind the avatar. That is one great way to do it, Kate. Is pick a couple riders that you enjoy and watch their Twitch.
It's good to see the body language as well as what's happening with the avatar, because we can kind of pontificate about what their body language may be and how hard they may be working based on the power that they're putting out. But it really adds another element when they do pop up on screen like that, and you get to see. And you know what? He actually looks pretty comfortable. I mean, 160 heart rate, you'd imagine he's starting to feel slightly uncomfortable, rock and roll a little bit on the bike, but he looked pretty in control actually.
I'm answering my own question earlier about Cameron O'Reilly. I'm going to guess that he's from a different O'Reilly clan. He rides for the Alto Velo racing team, but I see over on Zwift Power up there in NorCal, the Alto Velo team is the squad, and he's the manager of that team. So certainly representing very well. Again, Brian Kellison, man of the moment here, nicely tucked into this group for the Penn Velo team. And you see them picking up some speed.
Well, this is a place, so when it goes over 5%, you can do the power tuck, but Anna pointed out last night at this point on the course that if you don't come out of that power tuck before the game forces you out of it, it can actually be quite a big disadvantage. So if it pulls you out of that power tuck around the 3% mark, but you need to start pedaling before you hit that. Exactly. It'll then bog you down. We can see Brian Kellison. Again, now he's starting to rock and roll a little bit more on the bike. But interestingly, his heart rate is a little bit lower. So, Dave, I think this is perfectly to our point that we can only use the heart rate and the numbers as a bit of a guide. But I think that power's starting to go up, the heart rate's starting to climb. And this is an indicator that they're really turning the pace on here.
Yeah, and this is where it really hurts. Again, the getting over 23rd in Libby is what it's all about. That really puts you into the finale of the race, but you've got to get there first. And yeah, you can see now the body language tells us that this man is making big watts right now as we look at Brian. I mean, look at all the red and orange over here on the power profile. That says it all. That's all you need to know. He's on fire right now, and fuego here as our men are getting deep into it. It looks like, all right, so we're actually seeing the front of the bike race now, and he's back right on cue is going to be Cameron O'Reilly. Guys up in Northern California
O'Reilly
are all over this one.
Popping his head up, doesn't he? O'Reilly. I mean, he may not be from the same O'Reilly family, but maybe they're creating another chapter of the O'Reillys going on here, because he seems to be in the right place at the right time. The other rider who has started to creep up is Philippe Nystrom. I spotted him about 5 wheels back from the Costa Rica team. He had an incredible turn of speed last season, and I think if he can hang on at the finish, he'll do very well there as well. But we do have a couple of new riders or riders that didn't necessarily jump out last time. But if you head into Zwift Power and take a look at some of the numbers, especially towards a sprint, it's riders like Edwin Park and Lars Monks that really stand out if it does come down to even a little group. 19%. Did you see that? It just hit 19%.
Wow. Yeah,
this is definitely a nasty one.
This is where your smart trainer makes noises that you've never heard it make before, right? When you're throwing that many watts at it, and it's trying to basically stop you as it's like, look, you're going up a 20% grade. For those who aren't initiated into what that means, I mean, that means for every 100 feet you're going forward, you're climbing 19 feet in that example. That's an incredibly steep climb, no doubt about it. Here we go. The race is being won and lost right in front of our eyes as the guys are getting deep. They're getting stuck in. Now, this is that very unique view as we are on reverse Richmond, and that's the park that usually you finally get to take a breath as you come out of the cobblestones, but here we're going to dive into them now, and we'll make our way down to the bottom, down to the docks here before we start our way back up. And let's see how many men are still really a part of this race at that point. I'm anticipating a pretty big split being made. Let's see how many guys can chase back in now.
Well, the trainers, you hark on about touched on, sorry, the trainer settings. And I remember the first time I set my trainer setting to the realistic mode where when you go over gravel or cobbles, it kind of shakes a little bit. And I got the shock of my life. I really thought that the trainer was about to explode because I wasn't quite prepared for what that meant. I would suggest that if you're racing in these leagues, you'd probably turn that off because you want to be able to feel that consistency of power even through those cobbled sections. That might be a tip for anybody who's just jumped into Zwift racing and normally loves that effect. I think probably turning it off for racing is a good thing in order to keep that kind of neural consistency with your legs, because even if in game it slows you down a little bit, the less your legs feel that, probably the more efficient for them.
Ziegler, Monks, couple riders getting caught in this second group. That tells me it will come back together with this much talent back here. But not an ideal situation right now, but they're going to right the ship here as we move into the finale now for the men. So this is the last race of the day as we've made our way around the globe. This is going to be McCormick here of the Dad's Inside Riding Trainers, the Dirty Rascals Riot team, as he's going to connect. And it looks like another 10 riders or so will join this group to make this the ultimate selection here on Richmond Reverse. All right, Kate, let's lock it down. I think we can close the back door and put a padlock on it. Nobody else is going to be joining this group. The winner of this race is on your screen right now. But boy, there's a lot of riders who are still in the mix here.
We've got about 30 riders in that front group. Just taking a look at those bonus points so far. Cameron O'Reilly, the new O'Reilly royalty, he has taken quite a solid lead so far on 27 points. Lars Monks, one of your hot favourites, Dave, he's taken 21 points so far. Quinn Felton has taken third. Philippe Nystrom is sitting back on 16 points. I would say it's still fairly open at this point as
they're adding,
to what
that
may
last
happen.
Sorry, Kate, sorry to jump on you, but your pick, Philippe, the Costa Rican, as they update the last points there, moves up into second on points right now, right behind Cameron O'Reilly here. So nice call, Kate. Lars Monks with 21 points in third. So this just updated as we were looking at the table. These are the bonus points that have been on offer up to this point. You can see that distribution going a lot to O'Reilly, Nystrom, and Monks here. Sounds like a law firm.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Out of Boston Legal or something like that. Nystrom's one of those riders who, on paper, isn't necessarily one that you go, oh my goodness, this guy will light it up. But see, he's super savvy and he seems to really know how to ride efficiently and when to come into his own. And I have a feeling that when it comes down to the closing moments, that he will have conserved a bit more energy. Brian dug so deep at the beginning, all red power numbers for him to stay there. That's a bit of commentary on Brian Kellison, who we've seen pop up on screen a couple of times. And look at that graph that he's talking about. All that red is where he's literally gone into the red zone to get over those climbs. It almost kind of mimics our course profile a little bit. That big section at the beginning, that will have done him a little bit of damage. And that may be, it kind of explains, Dave, while even though his heart rate isn't too high, he may be suffering a little bit as a result of that. But I think he's done a really good job because this is a really select group now. We're down to 28. It's kind of the case where one by one, rather than people going off the front, Dave, people are just getting dropped off the back. That elastic band is snapping and they can't hold on any longer.
It sure is. You know, Kate, that is the perfect example as you look at Brian there. The difference between racing and working out, right? You can't get that graph without having to chase down riders and closing down gaps. And this is where you get the very, very most out of yourself out here. All right, we are picking up now with the under 10K to the finish as we're in with Jan, another one of the Penn Velo riders. That's a teammate of Brian Kellison, who we've been spending some time with here. They're pushing now, accelerator going down on the floorboard. You see some of the power-ups. Again, draft, arrow, and feather are the three that the riders will have to choose from. It's modified power-ups that we have in-game here. Northway, OTR, relatively large group there. When you see the women, a completely different story, as it's been all Velocity Vixens. Anna Rogers and company here. They're about 3.5K from the finish now. We'll see what happens out here with how they want to race this one. Again, it's entirely their prerogative at this point. Is this team? You made a good point, Kate. I would like to see these ladies getting up into the Premier League. Riders at this level, I think that they're ready. They really are. It was eye-opening yesterday with the men and the women about when you see the teams that didn't have the experience of racing in season one. When you talk about a steep learning curve, it is a massively steep learning curve, and these are riders that have figured that out, no question. As we look at, I wonder how they are going to play this one. I would imagine that. Why not sprint?
I mean,
right?
the comment,
have some fun with it.
Why not? And the comment about them being kind of unable to race in Prem League, given everything else going on in their lives, kind of highlights that they're really committed to this and they're doing everything that they can. Now, with that kind of personality and this kind of performance, they don't strike me as the kind of riders who will ride across the line holding hands, all four of them. I think it's probably game on from now. And this is where they can actually learn and really polish the craft of Zwift sprinting, because essentially there's nothing to lose from a team perspective. So why not just give it a crack and test out your own? Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Right. It's not like we're going outside of the boundaries of Foot's Fair. It's all, hey, all in good fun, ladies. And so typically you don't like to see teammates fighting. That's not what's happening. We're all trying to get better at this craft. And winning a sprint out of this group is a complicated thing, and you don't have to worry about getting caught. You're not going to crash. There, some of the things that you might think, oh boy, discretion tells me this might not be a smart move. Well, no, you're cleared, ladies, to go have some fun out there. I'd love to find out who the fastest woman of this group of four, because you've all impressed us out here. The four riders of the apocalypse today. I mean, they have definitely shown us what a super strong team is all about. It's almost unheard of to see something like this happen. So they've done that. So we're at about a little under 2K to the finish. Let her rip, ladies.
Yeah, well, now, I mean, you could approach this in a number of different ways. But what we can say for sure is whoever wins this sprint, this kick, is impressive and could essentially sprint at Premier League level, because that's the level of performance and athlete we've got going on in this front group of four. We'll call them that, the front group. And I'm wondering if somebody might take they might take a bit of a dig at a last minute attack, which is difficult to do when there's only four riders, but it may be laying off the wheel and kind of hitting them from the back when they're already really moving. I wouldn't mind seeing somebody do that rather than all roll into the finish together and then just sprint for the line.
Spoken like a true sprinter there, Kate. Wouldn't mind taking a whack at this one, would you?
Yep. I don't think you ever lose
you would tee them up,
honestly.
too.
I can't do it anymore, but I want to.
Look, my colleague, who never blows her own horn, is a world champion in an event that requires sprinting over and over again. And here we go. They're going to have some fun with this one. All right. So it looks like Janet Gillick is going to hit out first, and they're going to throw down their power-ups as well, or throw up their power-ups there as that arrow. But that drafting power-up there, that might be the difference. Here we go, as it's Gill here. I love it, ladies. Great job out there, and all the credit in the world today to the Velocity Vixen squad. I certainly look forward to see where this path takes these women. There's the finish arch. Do you call it a truss or a gantry or an arch in Australia?
A gantry, yeah, the Finnish gantry, definitely. The big
Not a
thing that is
term
like
we
the
use
beacon
here. Yep.
of getting higher.
It's what defines a big time bike race, to tell you the truth. That arch over the road, right? If you've got two cones, you're kind of at a local race. But when they make the effort to bring that in, you got yourself big time bike racing. And it's going to be Gill for the win. Nice job.
I feel like she maybe took them by surprise a bit there. Jana Gillick definitely has the most horsepower when it comes down to about 15 seconds, but she went pretty early, and I think Gill used her power up with very, very good effectiveness to establish that gap. Morgan Aldridge here, we've just swapped over to take a look at the bees from Cryogen. She was a name that consistently popped up in season one, so not surprising to see her out there again. She's got Hutter, her teammate, in that break. There is only three of them coming into the finish. Stephanie Ossenbrink is the other rider there. The 3-up sprint, not too dissimilar to that 4-up sprint that we just saw. Again, they really need to consider the timing and the very smart, timely and strategic use of whatever power-ups they may have.
Let me ask a question, Kate, that plays into your expertise. And I guess it would be personal depending on the rider that you're talking to. But for you, was it harder to win out of a small group? Did you like sprinting out of a larger group? Compare and contrast that, because a three-rider group is an interesting equation to run to the line.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're sprinting from a smaller group, it is far more about strategy and timing, because you can all look at each other. There's a lot more cat and mouse that goes on. There's fewer variables, but in saying that, you can really get the element of surprise a bit more if you time it well. And that's, my comment about kind of laying off and really hitting them quite hard, just going whack, I think is a really good small bunch way to sprint, by making sure that when you hit the back wheel of those two riders in front, that you're already moving 5 to 10 kilometres faster than them if possible, 2 to 3 kilometres if that's all you're doing, depending on whether people are kind of playing a bit of cat and mouse. Because by the time they react to that, it makes it very difficult to overcome it. Now, it's slightly negated by the fact that on screen we can see those orange numbers. Ossenbrink has opened up, and we can see the orange highlighted over there. So they know that she is moving. The element of surprise is somewhat reduced here.
Yeah, that's a big difference with esports, is the riders are much more aware of what's happening behind them rather than that ominous sound of somebody dropping it down into the 11. Well, Ossenbrink gets that one, Aldridge, and then Hutter in that order there. Great racing for our B women. Nothing quite like that sound. It really changed when carbon wheels came into play too, Kate, when the sprinters are slamming it down into their sprinting gear. You hear that sound reverberating through the carbon wheel. Final few Ks for the men here now.
So they're coming into the final sprint of the day here for the men. And so far, we haven't seen a huge split. There's still a lot of riders in this bunch.
Well, it's splitting the group, though. So that was the final. Sorry, there's the final bonus. We can see tied up now, 32 points apiece for Nystrom and O'Reilly, as Yayant Mukhop Adaya, feel pretty good about that, ending up in third right now with points. These are our bonus points being tabulated. Lars Monks with 23. 22, just one behind him, is John Heinlein there. So, and the, oh my God, they killed Kenny team. So that gives you a look at where we're at right now. And again, a little bit of perspective. It's basically like Cameron O'Reilly and Philippe Nystrom for their teams have already scored a third place, because that's what you get. 30 points is on offer for third. The winner of this race will get 40. So they've done their teams a huge favor with their efforts up to this point. And now we move into the finale, as we're at about a K and a half to go here, Kate. It is on.
Well, Philippe Nystrom, he's a Costa Rican champion. He's a very proficient road racer out in real life, born in Costa Rica, but he lives in America now. And he's, pretty big on the racing scene over there domestically. But it's a bit of a different thing when it comes to the esports world. And he's almost like the silent assassin because you don't actually see him in the bunch at all. He's very rarely on the front. He's not on the back. He always kind of hides in the middle and then just jumps out at that time. It's a big call. I'm going to put it out there pretty early this season. He is strategically one of the classiest esports racers that we've seen. He just really knows how to read it and how to ride. And so I think even the calculation of points, how he's improved each sprint, each KOM to the point where now, even if he doesn't score anymore, he still will finish high overall. I think that says a lot for the class and caliber of their riding. Has the sprint is opening up already. They are coming to the finish.
So here we go. They have hit out now. We're into the finale. It's, Felton for the Penn Velo team that has opened the account now. They're at about 500 meters to the line. He's got a couple second advantage. Again, it's too early to get too excited about this, but certainly that's a big move from Felton right here for the Penn Velo team. Let's see if they can make this pay off as that gap is holding at 2-3 seconds back to the group. He's in with the shot, Kate. I love the courage we're looking at here.
I think he caught them by surprise and he went hard and he went early. He opened up that gap and they're starting to come back. They are within sniffing distance. We can't see it on this shot, but let's flip it around. Oh, this is going to be really tight on the line, I think, Dave. They're coming very fast for him.
They're just going to get him. Quinn, good effort out there. The Penn Velo rider, Quinn Felton, has been caught. It looks like it's going to be Huang now coming through. Super impressive. Is this going to be enough? The AVRT team has had an exceptional hit. Boy, this sprint just goes back and forth all over the place out there. Wow, what a race.
Well, and I saw that Mashed Potato got second, and that's just a fabulous name, whatever that is. Now we're looking at the B women here, finishing off with the Herd of Meerkats, fabulous name that is. The C's, pardon me. They are just sprinting to the line. Oh, I think that Cheney might have just backed off a little bit too early there because she just got rolled on the line. We've seen that happen a couple of times. This is a really hard sprint if you mistime it, and the riders do need to look for markers. The pink flags, I think, are the mark we found last night in APAC about where they want to sprint from. But let's just take a look at the replay here. Felton, it was such a big gap until it wasn't, and the speed and the timing use of that power up for Felton, for Wu, pardon me, he just won by a couple of bike lengths ahead of Mashed Potato. Philippe Nystrom, he was in third, so I think he'll pretty dominantly take that overall win, actually, based on cumulative points.
Yeah, we'll start adding those points up now. This, again, it's certainly you watch the race and you can see who wins, but there's a lot more to it, different layers as we'll look back here. This is the replay. And talking about getting rolled at the line. You're only going to lead for 1 meter. Might as well make it the last meter of the race.
Yes, that's like the Cycling Bible by Dave Toll. I think that should be on page 1.
So great racing out here, no doubt, just across all of the categories throughout the divisions. What a way to open up season 2 here with day 1. It looks like we've got the Bees coming in hot now. I heard your discussion with Anna about the Aero helmet out here. No reason not to wear it, is there?
Well, that's what I think. I mean, in the virtual world, there's no disadvantage to it. There, in real life, aside from being, not allowed by the federations, it's actually not an advantage because it would be so hot in there, very hard to hear what's going on as well.
Awkward.
And in real life, the cues are very different. Not to mention how awkward you'd look. People would.
Can you imagine showing up for? Yeah, for a high level road race with experienced racers, you show up with your disc wheel and your aero helmet, and you will be hearing some snickering going on.
Yes, they'd
Might
be
as well wear
wondering who
might
that
as well
chump
wear the
was.
world champion jersey that you bought online while you're at it. Then just go all in. On the,
And no
the faux
socks if you
pas.
really want to look
No
legitimate in the cycling
socks.
world. But
Yeah.
if you bring
Oh,
it
oh,
to
wear
this
underwear
race,
under your chamois. Make sure you wear underwear under
oh,
your
gee,
cycling shorts too.
oh,
Yeah.
there's been an awkward conversation or 50 about that. I can tell you when you encounter new riders and you want to tell them, but you're just thinking, or
This is gonna
at
be
what point
awkward.
of comfortability is it appropriate to do that? But
It's
to go
worse than
back to
telling
the
someone
sensible discussion. Oh no,
right.
I'm
It's worse
happy to
than
stay
telling
off the
someone
sensible.
I'm with you. Oh, Musette Crocodile. I remember them. We loved them. And here we go. Fisher, O'Swain, and company finishing up for the Bees. There's the gantry. Looks like Fisher might have, well, you never, boy, you don't want to call these sprints too early, do you? Because that's what happens. A rider like Riken comes by like a rocket ship, and that's not over as Riken gets rolled here. Holy cow. It's flatter for the win. OTR in full effect. Boy, don't call these too early, Kate, right? As a commentator, it's easy to